colleagues on the commission to please take their seats.
How are you?
So that we can begin the January 20th, 22nd meeting of the California Transportation Commission. We are now in session. We're going to start with the call of the roll, please.
Commissioner Alvarado. Commissioner Semi.
Here.
Commissioner Burke.
Here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Art.
Here.
Commissioner Cromer. Commissioner Gilmetti.
Present.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Medaffer. Here. Commissioner Tabaloni. Here. Chair Gardino.
Present. Doug, thank you. And before we move forward, we want to welcome everyone again for joining us today for the January meeting of the California Transportation Commission. I'd like to start with good news on several fronts. First, wonderful news. Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins has appointed Transportation Committee Chair Jim Frazier to join us on this body. We are honored that someone with the passion for transportation as yourself, sir, will be joining us. Will you all join me in welcoming Assemblyman Frazier? Chairman Frazier, is there anything that you'd like to say? And if you could keep it to your best 2 or 3 hours, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome, and I look forward to learning from the commission. I look forward to all the experience and mentorship. Again, sharing a vision of putting people to work, getting people moving fluidly through California, and restoring our great state. So thank you so much, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Chairman Frazier, again, welcome and thank you for accepting this role. The second bit of good news, if you haven't heard, the Senate Rules Committee in their wisdom yesterday and the Senate floor today have approved for an additional term on the California Transportation Commission, Commissioner Alvarado and Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Inman, anything that you'd like to say?
No, the one up above.
This one up above. Oh, it's not the green light. I'm delighted and honored to serve and look forward to us all pushing the envelope forward as we work on our mobility of the future.
Fran, thank you again for your willingness to serve our state. With that, we'd be looking on agenda item 2 for approval of minutes of our December 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Vice Chair Dunn, a second by Commissioner Medaffer. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Oh, great. So we have one abstention then? Great. With one, for Commissioner Burke, will abstain. Thank you. With that, what a pleasure it is to ask Will Kempton to give our executive director's report. Will, 96 hours on the job now, or is it 72?
I think it's closer to 72, but feels like I've been here all my life.
You have.
And thank you. Well, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the commissioners for giving me a chance to engage in such an interesting position, and with the exciting time that we're facing and all the challenges that we have to deal with. It is still an opportunity for us as we accomplish some of the things that Chairman Frazier said with respect to moving California forward. I think that this is going to be a very interesting year. Many of you have asked me to look for ways to increase the commissioners' engagement in the issues and involvement and visibility, and we're already working on several ideas as to how we can do that. This commission is very well respected. I can tell you from being on the outside for many years that the Commission has a tremendous reputation, a great amount of respect, and I think we can really work to improve the effectiveness of the Commission representing some of the issues that we're looking at. Internally, I am going to be focusing on a couple of things that you've asked me to look at. First of all, a customer service culture here at the Commission. I know that we have some regulatory responsibilities, and from time to time, people aren't going to like some of the issues that we have to deal with, but I prefer to as opposed to being a regulator, I prefer to be a facilitator. And so that's sort of the attitude that I'm going to ask my staff to share, and that's how we will approach doing business. And we have to look at the efficiency of our own operations. I think we have a tremendous staff at the Transportation Commission, but there's always better ways to do business, and so we'll be looking at that as well. And then finally, I wanted to say that as a recognition of the quality of our staff, Susan Branson, our Chief Deputy Director, will be recognized tonight by the Sacramento chapter of the Women's Transportation Seminar at a banquet that most of the commissioners are planning to attend, and we look forward to seeing her receive that recognition. Congratulations, Susan. Mr. Chair, just a couple of administrative issues. Our calendar, your calendar, has been updated to reflect that Trinity County will be hosting a town hall meeting on September 17th and 18th. So we will need you to approve the updated meeting schedule to reflect the September 17 and 18 town hall meeting in Trinity County. If you'd like to take that action now, we can.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Taglioni, a second by Vice Chair Dunn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Note that we will be in Trinity County September 17th and 18th.
Thank you. Also, just a couple of administrative changes, staff changes at the CTC. We have promoted Ann Johnson to Associate Government Program Analyst effective this month. She'll be working on a whole range of duties and responsibilities, but she will continue to assist in coordinating travel and the meetings and some administrative activities on my behalf until her position is filled. Garth Hopkins will be joining us from Caltrans on a 6-month assignment. Many of you may know Garth. He's Caltrans Chief of the Office of Regional Planning. He's going to be reporting to Carrie Porvahidi, and he'll be assisting on a variety of planning-type activities, which is going to be extremely helpful. And by the way, thanks to Director Doherty for his willingness to provide this support to the Commission. Florence Chu, who is an Associate Accounting Analyst with the Department, she'll be with us for a 12-month assignment. She'll be reporting to Laura Pennebacher and will be assigned to assist on the road charge pilot program. So we have a lot of different activities that are going on. That's we're going to be a very busy organization, and I am excited about the opportunity, as I said at the outset, and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Executive Director Kempton. If you do not know this about Will Kempton, then you may have just moved here from somewhere else in the galaxy. But Will is a team player with great quarterbacking skills on his own as he guides a team. And his favorite team to watch other quarterbacks is based around the Bay Area, and they promise to have a better season next year. So as a small thank you to Will for coming back, I'd like to present him with a book on his favorite team, the San Francisco 49ers, from Kezar to Levi's Stadium. I will pass it this way first because all of of our commission colleagues are signing a note to you, Will, thanking you for returning to state service in an issue you know so well and have such passion around. But will you all join me again in thanking Will Kempton?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've had some conversations with Jed York, the owner of the 49ers, and if he doesn't get his act together, all transportation funding for access to Levi Stadium is going to be cut off.
with that, we'll make sure commissioners who haven't received this do. And Will Kempton mentioned the incredible leadership of Susan Branson on our team and her role most recently as our interim executive director. So Susan, this evening I'd like you to let me know the favorite restaurant for you and your husband so that we can provide you with a gift certificate as a small token of our appreciation for all that you do for the state of California. So you pick any place where you can drive through and talk into the clown's mouth, and will personally pay for it.
I was going to say that Subway's fine. Thank you.
Which is commission reports.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. And Commissioner Assemi, thank you for reminding me. We do have another special presentation before we leave the executive director item on our agenda. Aaron Akemi, are you here? Aaron, would you mind coming forward?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I have a note I'd like to share through the Chairman for the Commission and Will from the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy. And if you would indulge me, I'd like to read it for everyone here. Will, allow me to add my voice to the chorus of congratulations you are receiving since being named the California Transportation Commission's newest executive director. The commissioners clearly understand your expertise and ability in the realm of state transportation policy, and they have made a wise decision to secure you for this very important role. As you are well aware, these are exciting times for transportation for California's Central Valley. Kern County and the city of Bakersfield in particular have more projects completed, under construction, or awaiting construction than the prior 50 years combined. I'm pleased to know that we will have the opportunity to continue our professional relationship from your time at Caltrans and mine in the California Assembly. Again, congratulations on your latest appointment. Signed, Kevin McCarthy, House Majority Leader.
Aaron Akemi, thank you. Executive Director Kempton, we did reach out to House Democrat Leader Nancy Pelosi in case she wanted to offer a rebuttal, but she said no, there would be no rebuttal at today's meeting. With that, again, we're moving on to agenda item number 4, Commission reports. This is listed as an action item, or is it solely information? Staff?
This would be an information item,
Great.
unless the commissioner has some action. Yeah.
Yes, and we do. We have at least one. Fran Inman.
Well, not necessarily an action item, but to quickly go back to football, we are still looking for a football team in the South. So with the circle of life, be careful here. So anyway, seriously, I attended the TRB conference last week, and a number of our Caltrans colleagues were there and actively engaged. And I've asked Will if he won't take a look, because I think part of the challenge for all of us is there's an awful lot of really good work that goes on, and then we don't do a great job necessarily of transferring out and putting it all to work. So we're going to be actually taking a look at some of those sessions and some of those presentations and see if we can't share them with all of our colleagues as appropriate. And I'd like our friends at Caltrans to really think about doing the same thing so that we can take advantage of all of the great work that's done at TRB.
Commissioner Inman, thank you. Other commissioners who would like to report out? Seeing none, we're moving on to agenda item 5, commissioners' meetings for compensation. We'd be looking for a motion.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Taglioni, seconded by Commissioner Gilmetti. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. The next item is with such pleasure as we consider for March, I believe March 1, a new chair and a new vice chair. I'd like to open up for nominations for the chair. I see the light on of Commissioner Gilmetti.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure, is that on yet? My pleasure to nominate Ms. Lucy Dunn for chair and Mr. Bobby Alvarado for vice chair. It's a great honor.
And would you like to take them together, sir, or separate?
It's up to the pleasure of the commission.
Okay.
Well, that's fine.
It's a package. I like it when presidents and vice presidents and chairs and vice chairs are running on a ticket. So the motion and the second is for Vice Chair Dunn to be elevated to chair at the March 1 meeting. As of March 1, and for Commissioner Alvarado to become vice chair. Is there further nomination?
Just one other comment. So when you don't show up, you get nominated for these things. So that's what happens to Commissioner Alvarado.
Fair enough. We wanted to make sure it was unanimous, so we sent him out, perhaps. Is there a second nomination? Are there comments? Commissioner Arp, your light is on, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to comment.
No, I'm just going to vote for it when it's time. Sorry.
Okay. Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Will you all join me in congratulating Vice Chair Dunn? Lucy, we don't want you to offer a rebuttal, but would you like to offer any remarks?
2 minutes.
No, I'm very honored, and thank you very much, Mr. Gilmetti, for your nomination. It's my great privilege to be able to work with all of you, and I'm counting on all of you to keep us all on the right path. A lot of issues to work on together. So thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dunn, and congratulations again. Secretary Kelly, it's a delight to have you with us. If you are settled in enough, sir, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to be here, and let me start by conveying my congratulations to the incoming chair and vice chair. Is the vice chair here?
No, he
okay. What is he? Is he late? How can that be? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, Lucy, we've got a great working relationship. I've had it for some time, and I look forward to doing great things with you going forward. So congratulations. I've got a couple of things to report and some other general comments. The first is I understand that the Commission, I hope I'm not jumping in front of anything, but I understand the Commission also has a new executive director. And my first question for the Commission is, who is this guy? Does he know anything about transportation? Has he ever done any policy in this area? No? Okay. Yes, he will. Will, congratulations. And again, Will and I spent 18 years in the legislature before I moved to the executive branch, and Will and I we have a long history of working together on very tough issues, and the issues remain tough, but the opportunity to work together and do great things is here, and I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I just want to extend my congratulations to you, Will. So, and to tell the Commission, it's a great pick. It's a great pick. To the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, the first thing I think I want to report on is the kind of monumental day we had on January 6th, where we had the groundbreaking of the first construction segment, really the high-speed rail project in Fresno. The board has recently approved the selection of the second major construction contract to build the next 60 miles of the line between Fresno and Bakersfield. Caltrans is a key partner in that project and a component that shifts a mile of Highway 99, and we're helping on a day-to-day basis with the authority as it works through issues of moving forward on the right-of-way process, and we'll probably be involved in assisting in other areas as that project moves into a construction phase. And so that was a big day for all of us, an historic day, I think, in California, and I just wanted to convey to everybody what a monumental day that is, and hopefully portends great things for our transportation system going forward. I note some items on the agenda just to make a quick comment on. One is the active transportation program. I first want to thank the CTC for its work in this area. Baseline funding for the ATP grants is continuing at the same level in Cycle 2 as it did in Cycle 1, and additionally new cap and trade proceed programs are providing new funding options for these similar projects, both the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, for which guidelines were just adopted yesterday by the Strategic Growth Council, and the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. Both include funding eligibility for ATP projects. You'll hear more about the Low Carbon Transit Ops Program, I think, later today. Cap and trade programs and guidelines generally. The administration is moving aggressively to put together and adopt guidelines for the distribution of those funds, much of which is for transportation purposes in the current year. We are all, whether it's the transit operating program, the transit grant program, or some of the sustainable communities programs through the SGC, we are all aiming at a June 2015 distribution date for the first round of funding. And so we're very pleased about that, and I think that is a good sign of important investments going forward. On the grant program that my agency is most directly involved in administering, again, there will be a presentation later today about elements of those guidelines, and we're looking forward to finalizing those and adopting those on February 6th so that we can move to a distribution cycle as soon as June. Lastly, as I think everybody knows, the governor called in his State of the State speech for a dialogue to develop new revenues to really address the ongoing and long-time deferred maintenance problem on the state highway and road system. We are convening at our agency, which involves bringing in and talking with commission staff, the California Transportation Infrastructure Priorities Work Group, which has been a group that we've been able to bounce some ideas off of in the last year, get some recommendations for going forward. And I know we'll have robust conversations with legislative leaders like Mr. Frazier and the budget chair people in both houses, and Mr. Bell, who chairs the policy committee on the Senate side, going forward. So I think the governor's opened the door to a very important and timely conversation, and we're looking forward to engaging that going forward. So those are the things I wanted to just sort of cover as a few things happening in our world. And again, congratulate all the incoming officers here at the Commission. Thank you.
Secretary Kelly, thank you. And we look forward to hearing from you later today as well. Are there questions for the Secretary? Commissioner Medaffer.
Just a comment in that, Secretary Kelly, is to allude to the last issue that you mentioned. And just from my perspective, I just want to commend you and your agency and the governor for the comments in the State of the State speech and the priorities on transportation. It's welcome to hear. Clearly, we all recognize the need and the issues, certainly the fiscal challenges, but it's always great to hear when the chief executive of the state makes the strong statements that he did in the State of the State speech. And I, for one, just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Well said, Jim. Any other questions or comments for the Secretary? Seeing none. Moving on to item 8, report from our Caltrans Director, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair Gardino. Let me also extend my congratulations to Commissioner Dunn. I look forward to working with you over the upcoming year, and I'll extend my same congratulations to Vice Chair Alvarado when I see him. I also want to thank Chair Gardino for your interaction with us over the past year. It's been a pleasure working with you, and certainly your diligence and commitment to transportation was apparent over that past year, so thank you for you serving in that role. And I also want to extend in this forum my congratulations to Chair Frazier for the Assembly Transportation Commission, and I will say the same to Senator Bell for his chairmanship. And I look forward to working with both those bodies on transportation issues moving forward. And I've interacted with Assemblymember Frazier in the past, and I know that he has a passion for transportation, so I look forward to working with him, and congratulations. Will, I've also, as was mentioned by Brian Kelly, Secretary Kelly, I've also worked with Will in the past on occasion, but I want to congratulate Will. And, safety is our highest priority, and I wanted to make sure you had fresh personal safety protection. So there's a hard hat and vest coming down your way. I don't want you to be without, so that you're well prepared to take on your new role.
That's just for the commission hearings, right? Good luck. No, I'm just kidding.
couple of personnel notes on our part. Many of you may know that our Division Chief for Construction, Mark Alesia, retired at the end of last year, and certainly the department sent him off and thanked him for his long service, not only to Caltrans but also to the people of California. But one thing I do want to also acknowledge was the construction industry on several occasions in several very important forums took the opportunity to not only acknowledge but congratulate and recognize Mark Alesia for his years of service in the role of the Division Chief of Construction. And I think that's a reflection of his commitment as well as our commitment to partnering with the construction industry and executing our work. There's a lot of work that goes on to delivering projects and finding funding for it, but the construction industry is actually what puts the shovel in the ground and does the work. And their recognition of Mark Alesia, I think, speaks volumes to his role in that position. So I'm very appreciative of their recognition of him. In the meantime, while we try to fill that position, we've borrowed Rachel Falsetti, who you're all very familiar with, to serve as our Division Chief of Construction. So we will use her talents in that capacity for the next few months while we backfill that position. And in that time, we also are going to ask Bruce DeTerra to serve as the Acting Division Chief of the Division of Transportation Program. And many of you may have started to interact with Bruce, but you certainly will at the Commission meetings going forward. Bruce is coming off of serving as the Chief of Office of Freight Planning, so he played a very important role in developing the California Freight Mobility Plan and working with the 62-member on the Freight Advisory Committee, and he did a stellar job there. And I thank him for his willingness to serve in this capacity. On that note, I do want to mention the California Freight Plan, and we did circulate a flyer about the California Freight Plan, which just has some basic information. There will be a limited number of hard copies of the Freight Mobility Plan, but we would be more than happy to provide those to the Commission upon your request. That Freight Mobility Plan not only provides guidance in accordance with MAP 21, but also AB 14. And AB 14 called for that plan to be completed by December 31st, and we have completed that, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that information with you. Also, the Air Resources Board will be developing a sustainable freight strategy, and we are working very closely not only with the Air Resource Board, but in conjunction with the California State Transportation Agency in the development of their document so that it is in concert with the Freight Mobility Plan that we have developed. We also released and we passed around information on our Complete Streets Implementation Action Plan 2.0, and that was released in November of 2014. And some of the updated plan for this includes 109 additional action items to further integrate Complete Streets into all of our Caltrans functions and processes. And it includes such action items as the development of a state bicycle and pedestrian plan, collecting Complete Streets data and performance measures, continuing to revise Caltrans manuals to be consistent with and supportive of Complete Streets strategies, and it has a Complete Streets overview training course for Caltrans staff as well as outside external to our department, and then supporting district Complete Street Plan partnerships. So I wanted to make sure that I recognize that. I wanted to make a quick note. We have not had a whole lot of rain in the recent weeks, but in late we had quite a bit of rain, and it did cause some challenges to the transportation infrastructure and caused severe damage in several counties. We had impacts to the highway system in 20 counties and significant damage specifically in Marin and Ventura County. And the estimated damage to bring that to make those repairs is in the neighborhood of $60 million. I do want to recognize Federal Highway Administration and Vince Mamano, who I'm sure we'll hear from in a few minutes, in obtaining quick release emergency funds to the tune of $2 million. And we expect by the time we're complete all of the work on those routes that we will get 100% reimbursement from the Federal Highway Administration for the emergency work and then 88% of the permanent restoration work. But we continue to this day to have some closures on Route 1 in Marin County at Muir Beach north of San Francisco, and then also on the PCH in Ventura County due to mudslides, washouts, and wave erosion. So I wanted to make sure that I provided an update for you on that. Several agenda items that I will note. The new updated version of the quarterly report, and I appreciate the cooperation in working with CTC staff in developing that, and I know that if we have future ideas of how to best relay that status information to you on our project delivery activities, that we can make those revisions as well. But I think we've made great strides in trying to relay our project delivery activity meetings to you, as well as adding some projects that have significant risks associated with them that we're managing that have implications either to schedule or budget. And we will have that, be providing that to you in the updated version of the quarterly report. And again, I'm looking forward and happy that we were able to resolve that. And I also appreciate the opportunity to work with the new CTC Delivery Committee on those items, and I look forward to doing that going forward as well. You'll hear a presentation on the Transportation Asset Management Plan and how we've progressed on that, and I'll defer to the comments and presentation of Chief Deputy Director Kome Ajize on that. And lastly, I will note that, of course, tomorrow is the first Technical Advisory Committee on the Road User Charge meeting, and we're excited to get started on that endeavor as well and work with you to move that forward and evaluate the viability of that pilot. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and be more than happy to answer any questions.
Director Doherty, thank you for that thorough and very helpful overview. We appreciate the great work that you and your team do. If you look to my left from the audience, your right, if you're wondering if Executive Director Kempton had the shortest tenure as an executive director in the state of California, it is just him once again showing what a gentleman he is. That's option A, or option B, that I did not shower today, and he moved himself as far away from me as possible. But it is a delight to have to my left and the audience's right the new chair of the Senate Transportation and Housing Committee, who worked with Will on the original self-help county effort in Santa Clara County called Measure A for about 9 years when that passed in 1984. And we are delighted that State Senator Jim Bell is now the Senate representative on the commission. Will you join me in welcoming Senator Jim Bell? Senator Bell, if you would like to say hello, we are delighted that you're now on this august body.
Well, I'll attempt to see you frequently by attending as many meetings as I possibly can, to keep up with the business of the Transportation Commission. I'd like to thank Chair Carl, who I've known for a long time. I think he was a baby when I first met him. Will Kempton actually worked with our traffic authority. We hired Will and did a great job. He will be an excellent executive director for you. We're pleased that he's willing to do that. I was Will's boss, so for quite a while, for 10 years, I think. So I know Will, and I know he'll work very, very hard, and he's totally committed to transportation. I just got through the Budget Committee, so I'm sorry I'm late. And I know that my colleague, Assemblyman Frazier, and I will work well together as well. We're kind of the Bash brothers, right? And I guess they picked the two biggest members, the biggest guy in the Senate and the biggest guy in the Assembly, to chair the Transportation Committee. Isn't that interesting? I don't know why, but that's the way it goes. Well, thank you very much. I'll be happy to participate as much as I can. Thank you.
Senator Bell, thank you. And it's because they know it's a big job that we have to do in transportation in California, so they pick two big leaders. Senator Bell, right here at your seat is a gift to our new executive director. You know how much he loves his 49ers, so if you can open it up and sign inside, I know he would appreciate a note from you as well. With that, we're going to move on to, unless there were questions for Director Doherty before we leave that? No, thank you again. Then let's move on to a report from FHWA, California Division Administrator. Yes, there he is. Vincent Mamano, welcome. It's always great to have you with us.
Thank you, and this is one?
It is.
Thank you, and Happy New Year. To everybody, congratulations to everybody who deserves a congratulations. Federal Highway does the same thing for transportation in California. They had the beef here and for the division administrator here, too, so it's an over 200-pound rule. And no neck, too. 200 pound, no neck, and a couple chins, then you got a shot at the job. So a few things said this the last few months.
Congratulations, Vince.
Thank you. I feel good about it. And under, there's a height requirement too. You're out, by the way. So there's a couple things. Been talking about MAP 21, the extension of MAP 21, the authorization. That's our ability to go and do good things. That goes to the end of May. The appropriations, which is the funding of that, goes to September. That went with the whole government one. So we're still looking for long-term legislation with the new Congress coming in. We're hoping to see something that's a little bit longer term. We haven't seen long-term legislation since Safety Lou, so we're hoping we're going to see something longer. I'm not sure how it would go. I wouldn't even guess at this moment. But there's a few things with MAP 21 that you need to keep an eye on. The notice of proposed rulemakings are coming out fairly regularly. One of them just came out recently. The notice of proposed rulemakings for pavement and bridge conditions, performance management or performance measures. That's for interstate national highway system and non-interstate national highway system, regardless of who owns the roads. So it used to be pretty much the state owned most of the national highway system, but now with the expanded national highway system, a lot of local agencies may own those roads. The state's still responsible for getting us that data. So when you look at that notice of proposed rulemaking, vote early and vote often. So it's make your comments in that, and I think what's important with all these rulemakings, and I'm kind of saying this to everybody out here too, with all the rulemakings, it's important to comment on the things that you like as well. If you like something in it, you think that works, make sure you comment on that, because if another state or 20 other people say they don't like it, and there isn't 50, 100,000 people saying they like it, that could skew what you're talking about. So when you do a thorough analysis of it and talk about the things you'd like to change, how you'd like to see it, as well as the things you like in it. I think that's a very important piece to that not everybody always gets. That performance measure, that notice proposed rulemaking ends on April 6th. And the way that process works, the law tells us to go do something. The regulation is how we implement the law. The notice of proposed rulemaking is a notice to everybody that we're going to have a final rule which is going to be a regulation. So this is your opportunity to influence what the regulation looks like at the end. So that's what I move off of is the regulations, and this is going to scope how we're going to do that. A couple other things. Yay, huge yay to everybody in this room on inactive obligations. California, again, is carrying the country. That's the money that sits on a project that's over a year and hasn't had any spending on it. We're well under 1%. I think we're right around 0.01%, which means we're spending the money that's on the projects, which is a good thing. Our DBE participation is up. We're close to 12% on last year. I think our first quarter of this year, it's up over, our goal is 12.5%. The DBE is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. And our goal is 12.5%, and right now I think we're around 14% participation in the first quarter. So that's have a very high bar with your good faith efforts. That's getting out there, bringing people in, getting these DBEs certified, and that's something. If you see these DBEs out there and they're not certified, get them certified. We're trying to fill that pool so we have a lot of people to choose from and help build that program. I always talk about tribes. I got to keep talking about tribes. I think that's something that's growing here in California. I appreciate the attention that's going to that. But the outreach to the tribes in California, we've got over 100 federally recognized tribes in California, and they touch a lot of different things. And the key to this, and it came across it a little bit at the last meeting, is early involvement with the tribes. Don't bring them in to comment on something. Bring them in to help make the decision. And I think that's important. I think it's what's right for the tribes, that they are involved in how you make the decision. So that's what we're asking, to make sure we continue to do that outreach. I know Secretary's office has got a big push on that also. And it's a push to recognize this is where we're supposed to be. Two other things. ET Plus, which is the guardrail end treatment that's kind of been in the news a lot. There's a lot of one-sided information that keeps getting out on the ET plus N treatment. And sometimes it's one side on this side, and sometimes it's one side on that side, but I've very seldomly seen both sides shared. Caltrans has supplied us 8 Federal Highway 8N treatments. There was a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit. So we asked Caltrans if they could supply us 8N treatments that were going to be installed. So these are ones that are in action. So we thank Malcolm and his team for supplying that and all the support you've given to help us to get that testing going. There's going to be 8 tests on it. Should be doing the last one tomorrow, depending on the weather. So far, I think they said it's been uneventful, which is a good thing. To date, each of them performed like they were supposed to. The report isn't completely out, so we don't want to get into committing to any of that because there might be some piece of that needs to be evaluated a little bit more. And there's a lot more going into it. There's a lot of data being collected from all of the states, crash data, and how these N treatments are working and responding. But again, I want to thank Caltrans for their efforts in helping us get that testing. And there's a lot of people that are asking each of the states, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing? And most of the states are saying, well, it's Federal Highway is the ones doing the testing. Federal Highway is the ones going to come up with the evaluation, and we're going to respond to what Federal Highway does. And I know currently Caltrans right now is not installing any new ones anywhere in the state, waiting to see what the results of the testing are. So that hopefully is coming out within the next couple months. Is that the same status you got, Malcolm? Secretary's 30-year framework is coming out. I think the President actually mentioned that in his State of the Union speech the other day. That's coming out. It's going to have an opportunity for public comment, public involvement, so I encourage everybody to keep an eye on the Office of the Secretary, DOT's website, to look at that to see what their involvement could be in that. And lastly, thank you, Fran, for a heads up, and Fran and I have talked about this several times. There's a Talking Freight webinar that happens every month. It's the monthly Talking Freight webinar. There was one yesterday on e-commerce talking about the impacts of goods movement and how that's impacting a lot of different things. And I don't know, Fran, if you want to talk a little bit about that in a sec, but I want to encourage everybody. This is a monthly webinar. It's done through the Federal Highway Administration. So you can go on our Federal Highway website and search the website for the monthly Talking Freight webinars. And I think that that's an important piece. And as you can see, we had the opportunity to do a tour of both Long Beach and Port of LA and Kroger Distribution Center and the Alameda Corridor, and we had an opportunity to see how the goods movement go a couple weeks ago. And I think it's very important to California. It's very important to be involved in California in the freight discussion, and I think that that's important. I don't know, Fran, if you want to add anything to the Talking Freight.
Thanks, Vince. On the Talking Freight, the great thing about those, they're all archived. So when you wake up in the middle of the night and you want to be challenged.
And they're archived on the federal.
It also helps put you back to sleep.
Yeah, right.
You wake up in the middle of the night.
No, but yesterday's I was thrilled to have on their agenda because the world of retail is changing at lightning speed, and e-commerce is old news. Now it's omni-channel distribution, or m-commerce for mobile commerce. So I think it really, really is important for all of us in the transportation sector to figure out what that means with our investments and how we can really integrate and find those solutions. So thanks. I think we also have, we're very, very interested in the work that you all are doing on the truck parking. It's a huge issue for all of us with the hours of service requirements, and anytime you all are out on the highway now, I think you'll notice a bunch of our rigs are just simply parked on the freeways because to comply with the hours of service rules, they have to stop driving. So I know that's an initiative. We're also very, very interested as we move forward and look on the national strategic freight plan as that is finalized, and I do believe Federal Highways has listened to a number of us and looked at those intermodal connectors and trying to really figure out how we can collectively really understand this world of goods movement. So thank you very, very much. And also, as I mentioned earlier, some of the work and the discussions at TRB, but right now in Southern California, we have a crisis going on in terms of the large cargo alliances. We're getting cargo surges, and we're simply not prepared for those. We also have issues with the chassis imbalance, where our shipping partners have decided they are not going to be in that business sector. And we've got a lot of misplaced chassis in one place when we need to have them in another. Our ports are collectively trying to figure out solution, but it's an evolutionary process, and so we're not there yet. We also are hoping that our labor partners and their management, the PMSA or the PMA, will continue to work at the table and resolve their differences. So I think it's an important time, and I want to also take this opportunity to thank Bruce and Comey for the work on the freight plan and acknowledge that we still have a lot of work to do together.
And Malcolm, thanks again. Just kind of to let you know where Caltrans, where California stands, I think you should already know that, but I got a call from our administrator's office asking if I could reach out to Malcolm and then see if he would sit on an innovation panel at TRB. So TRB, as you know, is the Transportation Research Board. We're talking 10,000 people. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people that attend this event. And I was asked by the administrator's office, so that's my top dog, asked if Malcolm would sit on a panel. So I appreciate you sitting on that panel, Malcolm. And our ER, like you said, we got some quick release money. We have that ability, some flexibility. It's something that Federal Highway has changed internal in our own process. If we see an event that's going to amount to a fair amount, I have the ability personally to make the decision to request $2 million even without talking to the state. We get a little bit of information and we can do that, and we've done that a few times here in this state. And we're looking, that's our emergency relief program, that's our ability to come in and help out in a disaster, any of that type of information. So is there any questions for me?
Malcolm, thank you for the update. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did I call you Malcolm?
That's okay. Sorry. There, is that better? Down here. I'm down here.
Yeah.
No, that's a shot at Malcolm. That's a cheap shot at you, Malcolm. I don't care about anybody says. Everybody's thinking it. That's a cheap shot at you, pal.
Yeah. It's like you were separated at birth.
That's exactly like that.
Stunning.
You're right.
Thank you, Vince. That got the attention of two people in this room. I'm glad to see that. Let's move on to our report by regional agencies moderator, Renee Tveroki. Renee, welcome.
Good afternoon, chairs, commissioners, Senator Bell, Assembly Member Frazier, Secretary Kelly, and both directors. We've got a full dais up there today. So on behalf of the group, I wanted to welcome Will to his new position and extend our thank you for visiting our meeting today. We look forward to working with you and collaborating with you in your new capacity. As you noted, there are many exciting things happening in our world of transportation planning and funding over the next coming months and years. And there are many opportunities to educate and highlight, so we look forward to working with you on that. Also to note, I wanted to thank you, Chair Gardino, for your leadership over the past year, and congratulations to our new chair and future new chair and vice chair. With that, I'll jump into what our report was. So a common theme of our meeting today was the conditions of our streets and roads. We are encouraged to hear that the governor is calling attention to the statewide need to improve and maintain our roadway, and we are hopeful that on the legislative front there may be opportunities related to revenue generation. Later on the agenda, you're going to be hearing about the results of the 2014 Streets and Roads Needs Assessment. The message here is that California's average local street and road pavement condition continues to deteriorate, and we're hopeful that an increased interest on this at both the state and federal level will help move this topic forward, looking for long-term solutions to our funding gaps. As we continue to watch and track all the various funding programs roll out over the next few months, we're actively monitoring all the cap and trade programs. The Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program just moved into action this week, and so many of us will be looking at our projects and figuring out what we can put forward. Also, the Transit and Intercity Rail program, which will be flowing through this commission, is something that we're actively monitoring and looking for projects there. Similarly, we'd like to thank Laurel and Lori for their continued engagement of our group and stakeholders in the ATP Cycle 2 guidelines. The draft guidelines that are on the agenda today take a step forward and incorporate lessons learned from Cycle 1, and we are encouraged to the approach to improve the application and review process. We're encouraged that looking forward to savings and rolling of programming and the ability to include a contingency list at the MPO level. Other opportunities that we're tracking related to funding are the future Highway Safety Improvement Program call for projects. We're encouraged by what Caltrans has proposed in terms of steps to increase project delivery in this area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Renee? Seeing none, Renee, thank you. Let's move forward with our report by Rural Counties Task Force Chair, Jerry Barton.
Good afternoon. Started that way. I'm not sure this thing's actually on. I can't hear myself speaking very well.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Commissioners, and Happy New Year to each of you. And I would like to, on behalf of the Rural Counties Task Force, welcome Executive Director Kempton. We know that he has an excellent understanding of rural issues and concerns, and we, too, will be extending an invitation for him to attend a future task force meeting. So looking forward to working with you. At the last meeting, I mentioned that a lot of rural counties received a very small allocation of funding from the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, and we understand that in the next round, this fund source is anticipated to increase significantly, which will be very helpful to the rural agencies. And we also understand that Caltrans Mass Transportation is looking to administer this program similar to the PTM ISEA program. And we're very supportive of this approach, as it will allow agencies to roll funding over year by year to accumulate enough funding to develop a worthwhile project. With regard to the STIP guidelines update, we're pursuing the development of a rural performance measures study specifically targeted at the requirements of the STIP. And we've identified a number of challenging performance metrics and data limitations and concerns that we have, and we'll be looking to alleviate those challenges through this report, which we anticipate will be complete in time to be incorporated in the next STIP cycle. I've been providing you with updates on the rural counties streets and roads needs assessment that we've been working on for some time. And as you know, maintenance continues to be an issue of concern both on the rural and statewide level. You'll receive a presentation today on the statewide needs assessment, and that study indicates that the statewide average pavement condition index is 66. And we know from our study that the pavement condition index in the rural areas is lower at 58. So we're very supportive of the governor's efforts to find funding for the shortfalls in maintenance. And our final report will be completed at the end of the month, and we anticipate having a presentation to you at your March meeting. So we'll look forward to that. We'd also like to thank the work of the Commission staff on ATP Cycle 2 and the development of the guidelines. We've been very engaged in those discussions, and we have included a letter in your packet with a number of recommendations. And I hope that you will have a chance to look at that. I'll spare you the highlights at this moment. We've also heard some concerns with regard to the Interregional Strategic Plan, or the ITSP. The priority interregional corridors or focus routes serve as the backbone of goods movement and travel throughout our state and beyond. And we're hopeful that the ITS will maintain the commitment of Interregional Improvement Program funds to improvements that truly serve interregional travel and goods movement. We're looking forward to the release of that draft report, which is anticipated soon, and the forthcoming presentation at the March meeting. And at that time, we may have some more detailed comments. Other than that, congratulations to the new chair, Commissioner Dunn, and others in their new positions. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jerry, thank you. Any questions for Jerry? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12, report by Self-Help Counties Coalition Chair, Keith Dunn. No, not Keith Dunn. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Diane Steinhauser. I'm the Director of the Transportation Authority in Marin.
And current chair, Keith's our director of the Self-Help County Coalition. We represent 20 counties around the state that are putting in between $3 and $4 billion annually into transportation statewide. Welcome to Senator Bell and Assemblyman Frazier and Chair Gardino, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to report today. Congratulations to Director Kempton. We know you well and have worked together quite a bit over the last few years on transportation issues. We look forward to continuing to work with you. The Self-Help County Coalition is sponsoring a policy-level bill through the legislature. We look forward to working with Assemblyman Frazier on this regarding managed lanes. This is very similar to a bill that came up and didn't progress any further than August, and we also recognize that the department and the agency are going to be looking at a budget element associated with managed lanes in the budget trailer bill. So we look forward to communicating with agency and particularly with your office, Assemblyman Frazier, on this activity over the coming year. We're going to be meeting with Caltrans and your entire team in March. We look forward to hearing about your efforts to address the SSTI report and other elements of the department's activity. We have a lot of activity heading into the 2015 and 16 year. In the Bay Area alone, there's 9 agencies that are looking at either renewing or growing our sales tax for transportation purposes. We're very interested in the work of the CTIP group, along with the road user charge. We're going to be following that activity closely, which kicks off tomorrow. For those of us that have to market and manage and educate on the need for transportation, having state funds to leverage is a very important message. So we look forward to you helping us, and we look forward to helping you with continued source of local funds over the next 2 years. Most of us are shooting for 2016, obviously, for renewing or growing our sales tax on the ballot. And finally, I wanted to give a personal thanks to Caltrans. Nobody addresses emergency situations on roads better than you and the contracting community behind you and the work you're doing in Marin and elsewhere. So thank you. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions for Diane? Yes, Vice Chair Dunn.
Thank you, Diane. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit because I think we're going to get a report on pavement conditions, but of the 9 agencies renewing or growing sales tax measures in 2016, do you know of any of them that are including pavement management or pavement maintenance as part of their renewals or expansions? Well, 7 of them just in the Bay Area are counties. 2 are transit operators.
I see.
Of the counties, I think a majority of us always include a local road maintenance. It polls very well. Potholes are strongly supported by both bike ped and transit communities as well, because those trips always necessitate the use of local roads. So I think most of us will be including that to lesser or greater percentages within our expenditure plans. That's been typical.
Okay.
So some more so. Napa, for example, converted a sales tax that they had in place to address flooding in the Napa River to almost 100% local street and road. And so they're now one of our newest self-help counties, and a few others are leaning heavily towards a high percentage of local street and road maintenance.
Thank you. I just remember reading that Orange County was a little bit of a bright spot in some of the bad news on maintenance because they did include it and got strong voter support. So just want to keep those facts in my head, and thank you for your leadership on that.
Sure.
Other questions for Diane? Yes, Commissioner Inman.
So is it 9 entities total or just 9 from the Bay Area?
It's 9 just from the Bay Area, 7 counties considering, some further along than others, renewals or growth in sales tax. 2 transit operators, BART and AC Transit. Now, this is just rumor at this point, but the plans are coming together, and we're out polling, and we're out talking and trying to develop, both profile projects as well as needs assessment, countywide plan updates, all of that precedes an actual expenditure plan process.
So do you have a list of the total state? How many folks are talking about it?
I don't have a list of the total state, but we'd be glad to kind of give you a report in the next month or 2 as to who else might be moving in that direction.
Well, because I know LA County is talking about what's next.
Right.
Other questions? Yes. Other questions of Diane? Diane, thank you.
Very much.
Let's move to agenda item 13, state and federal legislative matters. Carrie.
Commissioners, agenda item 13 has been provided to you as a pink. This is an action item. The legislature convened on January 5th to begin the first year of a new 2-year session. The last day for the bills to be introduced is February 27th. Staff is currently monitoring 6 bills which are identified in Attachment A of your book item. Attachment B of your book item includes a list of the Transportation Policy Committee chairs and members for both houses of the state legislature, as well as the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, and the House of Representatives Transportation Infrastructure Committee members. On January 3rd, the United States Congress convened its 114th congressional session. At this time, the Federal Highway Reauthorization Bill has not been introduced, and as Vince mentioned, the current federal authorization expires May 2015. Staff recommends the Commission accept the staff report and provide direction to staff on any legislation of interest.
We have a motion to move it from Commissioner Taglioni, a second by Commissioner Medaffer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. Carrie, thank you for the report.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, ma'am.
One quick question. Perhaps Carrie could give us an update. I understand that there's some good news on AB 401, that the court actually ruled in favor of Caltrans, or perhaps Director Doherty could address that.
Mr. Chairman, I can address that.
Great.
Yes, the Superior Court involved in the case ruled in favor of the position of the local agencies and Caltrans involved in that case. The particular issue was a lawsuit that challenged the provisions of AB 401 because it violated, allegedly it violated the provisions of Proposition 35. And the court has ruled against that allegation and has confirmed that 401 is consistent with Proposition 35 and that the design build provisions can proceed.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we're going to hear from Laura on item 14, the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee and Pilot Program Update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Agenda item 14 has been provided to you as a pink. This is an action item. Staff is bringing forward for your consideration the remaining 3 appointments to the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee that is being convened by the Commission pursuant to Senate Bill 1077. At the December 10th meeting, 13 of the 15 members were appointed to serve on the committee, with appointments pending for the Privacy Rights Advocacy Representative and the Assembly Speaker designee. After the December meeting, staff received notification that the telecommunications representative that was appointed would be unable to participate on the committee, leaving 3 appointments outstanding. Utilizing the consultation process outlined in statute, staff identified and secured the participation of Eshwar Pinampalli with the Open Mobile Alliance to serve as the telecommunications representative, as well as Lee Tian with the Electronic Frontier Foundation to serve as the Privacy Rights Advocacy Representative. And most recently, the Assembly Speaker designated Assemblymember David Chu of San Francisco to serve as the Assembly Legislative Representative. Staff recommends your appointment of these 3 individuals to the Technical Advisory Committee, thus completing the committee membership. The first meeting of the committee will be held tomorrow, January 23rd, here in the Lincoln Plaza Auditorium from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The agenda and meeting materials for the committee meeting have been posted to the Commission's website, and the meeting will be webcast. That concludes my staff report. I would be happy to take any questions.
Laura, thank you for the great job that you and your colleagues have been doing on this Herculean task. task. Are there questions for Laura? And if Commissioner Medaffer, who we have asked and he has accepted chairing this task force, would also like to weigh in, we would welcome that. But other questions for Laura first? Seeing none, Commissioner Medaffer.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll move the item since it is an action item.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second, and we'll freeze frame. Go ahead, Commissioner.
But I just want to commend Laura and Carrie and Susan for their Herculean efforts over the last couple of months. Certainly over the holiday break, when a lot of us were probably taking time off, they were working on this project. The commission needs to know that they put in a lot of time, meeting with both Caltrans from Secretary Kelly on down, and I just can't say how blessed we are as a commission and frankly the state to have such a dedicated team. And now that Will is on board to help join in that effort and shepherd things along, I know we'll have I'm very hopeful we're going to have a successful technical advisory committee process that starts tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So thank you very much again.
Commissioner Medaffer, again, thank you for your willingness to serve as chair. Are there other questions or comments for Laura or our team? With that, we'll look forward to the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee starting tomorrow. Item 15, budget.
Excuse me, can we get a vote?
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Thank you again. Questions on the motion or the second? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving these three new members to join the task force, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I'd also note that Jim Bell has agreed to serve on behalf of Senate President Kevin De Leon. Senator Bell, thank you for doing that. With that, that passes unanimously. On to item 15, budget and allocation capacity update. Laurel Jansen, Stephen Keck.
Yes, Commissioners. Stephen will be presenting on the next three items. It's the Stephen Show this morning.
All right. Stephen, welcome back.
Thank you. Cycle. So we start off with this chart, which is our traditional chart. It shows allocations to date. We've got about $942 million worth of allocations toward the 178 projects through December. It's about a quarter of the total capacity, and it leaves about $2.7 billion to go across all programs. At this point, we don't see any need to change the capacity of any of these programs. Periodically we look at how funds are coming into the state, what we're spending and all that, and we make adjustments if necessary to the allocation capacity. We see no need to change anything at this time. So that's good news. In terms of the department's budget, as you are aware, the governor released his budget proposal on January 9th, which was just last Friday before last, I guess it would be. The budget for Caltrans is declining slightly down to $10.5 billion. This, again, we've seen this in the last couple of years, it decreases in our budget as we kind of wrap up the Proposition 1B program. We're not seeing a lot of new capacity there. We're recycling some of the savings we've got, but not new bond programs, so we're kind of wrapping that up. You see a $97 million increase in state operations. Now, about 3/4 of that is just related to salary changes and benefit changes, and the rest of that is something I'm going to walk you through each piece in the next couple of pages. So we have budget change proposals in the governor's budget for specific items. The number one item and the largest item, well, I shouldn't say largest, but certainly the most interesting item, I'll say, is a request for $9 million to support the implementation of the road usage charge pilot. We're asking for a multi-year appropriation so that we can provide the actual pilot itself after the TAC does its part and recommends the design of the pilot. Caltrans will take over and implement the pilot. So this is funding for all of those portions of the pilot. The department has a request in for a $12 million increase to accelerate greening of our fleet to
meet with ARB requirements on diesels and other engines. This is an ongoing effort of the department, and the department's really leading the way in this area. This is something that contractors, private industry has to do as well. The department's right there with them. We're not exempt from this, and we're doing our part. There's a very minor increase in the PID program, about 25 positions and $3 million. There's two pieces here. One is to make sure that we have enough PIDs to fully fill the pipeline, so to speak, on shop capacity. And we're also starting to create a little bit of a PID queue so that we're not scrambling for PIDs when we need to utilize savings or when new funding becomes available. This is absolutely in line with where we need to be to prepare to use all the funding that's available for the department. A couple other minor changes. We're looking to increase the maintenance on our ITS elements. Those are intelligent transportation system elements that manage traffic flow. These are elements, loop detectors, signals, and other elements that help us manage traffic flow. It's not a secret the department hasn't always been the best in being able to maintain these elements. And we were asking for an increase in resources to be able to do that. We spend a lot of time and effort putting these in to manage traffic flow. This is going to help us to maintain those systems to make sure they do what we want them to do. As I think has already been mentioned, as part of the budget, there are two budget trailer bill items that are coming through related to transportation. One is to restore authority to the state and to, I believe, also local agencies to authorize new HOV lanes and HOT lanes. And another proposal to streamline the relinquishment of state-owned properties. This is relinquishment of the highways that are no longer important parts of the system back to a local agency. And finally, last, I say this for the last, and certainly is good news and something that's already been talked about. The governor in his State of the State address specifically mentioned highway transportation needs. He called out a $59 billion shortfall, and he challenged the legislature to work towards a fix. I've been doing this job for a very long time. I've been with Caltrans for 15 years in the budget shop, and I've not seen any governor come out and say something like this before. And I was smiling for probably 2 weeks. And if you see how much I smile, you know what that means. It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. That's the good news. And I'm going to end this budget presentation with some bad news. So part of the funding that comes for transportation, especially highway transportation and local road transportation, is what we call a price-based excise tax. So with the fuel tax swap that we had a few years ago, we eliminated sales tax and replaced it with a price-based excise tax. Each year, the Board of Equalization issues a new tax rate that is supposed to duplicate a sales tax, if that sales tax were still in place. The governor's budget makes an estimate of what they think that new tax rate is going to be, and they make an estimate of the revenues. I'll say that again. These are not the actual revenues based on what the BOE is going to say. They will release their number before March 1st, required by law, but we don't know what that is yet. But this is what's in the governor's budget. On the left-hand side is a pie chart that is the current year distribution of our 18-cent per gallon price-based tax, $2.5 billion. Off the top of that, by law, comes the backfill for the late fees that are being used for debt service. So $992 million of late fees were collected and sent to the transportation, the debt something fund. For some reason, can't remember the name. But that pays for the debt service on Proposition 1B bonds and other transportation bonds. The remainder is split 44% to the STIP, 12% to the shop, and 44% to local cities and counties. Next year's estimated excise tax rate to replace the sales tax is 12.5 cents, and that's estimated by the administration, not the BOE. This, of course, is related to falling gas prices. I'm sure nobody has failed to notice that gas prices have dropped by more than $1 in the last 6 months. We're actually seeing all of that swing just since the middle of June. So the last 6 months, virtually all in this fiscal year, we're seeing a drop in prices we've not seen before. So the estimate from the administration is a 12.5-cent tax, which is a significant decrease in total funding. Now, because off the top of that comes late fees, the amount that's left to be split, 44, 44.12, is relatively small. So the total pie has decreased from 2.5 to 1.8, but the late fees are still eating about $1 billion of that pie. So what's left for the STIP and locals is $325 million each, and the SHOP piece drops to about $89 million. Now, on the STIP side, when we do allocation capacity for next year and when we look at the fund estimate for the STIP and the SHOP next year, I don't think you're going to see a drop in capacity that's quite as dramatic as this because of the way that we cash flow. We've taken into account, we knew this was going to drop. Nobody knew this was going to drop this much. I mean, if anybody told me 6 months ago that gas prices are going to be $2 a gallon, I would have walked away laughing. So we knew there was going to be a drop. This is a little bit bigger than we thought, but the good news is the impact of the STIP won't be quite as dramatic as what you see here. And finally, just a little list of upcoming events. I'm going to talk about the fund estimate in the next two items, so I'll skip those. Chart C, that big chart with all the lines on it, that everybody's favorite chart, is coming out around April 1st. Vince already mentioned the Federal Transportation Act expiring in May. May revision to the governor's budget comes out in May, which may include hopefully some changes. I don't know where we're going with that, but certainly changes to the budget related to that price-based excise tax, and then finally the budget itself adoption by June 30th. That's it for that presentation. If there's any questions, and I'm sure there probably are.
There are at least a couple, Commissioner Gilmetti and Commissioner Medaffer.
Thanks for that presentation, Stephen. I've got a couple of questions and maybe some comments. On your governor's budget transportation overview, that slide, I run a business, but I don't know that you guys run it the same way. You're increasing your overhead by $97 million and reducing your capital outlay by $456. Why is the overhead going up when your capital outlay expenses are going down? And you're also increasing more positions by 90.
Okay. So the position change, I'll get to it in a second, but the $97 million is not overhead per se. That's
well, you mentioned salaries.
Yes. So I have no control over salaries. Those are a negotiated benefit between the unions and the administration. These are salary adjustments that were included in those negotiations. It also includes changes in benefits such as medical benefits. So about 3/4 of that increase is a result of that.
But if our actual workload is going down by, let's say, approximately 10%, why shouldn't your overhead go down by 10%?
So there's two pieces to this. The workload associated with capital outlay is something that's adjusted in part of the May revise each year. So the budget that's in January would not include any of those changes yet. It's just on a different cycle. The second piece is for state operations going up, some of those items that I detailed in the next 2 pages are discrete requests for new initiatives, such as taking better care of our traffic management systems. That's 64 positions are going towards that. So that's not overhead. That's additional maintenance of the highway system. We are also increasing by 25 positions the project initiation document budget. That program is the program that does the PIDs, which is the start of the design of a project. So in order to program a project, they have to have a PID document that outlines the estimated scope and cost of a project. We need these additional positions to fill the pipeline for additional SHOP projects that were identified in the 2014 funding.
I've never seen the positions go down since I've been sitting on the commission.
So, well, now that's not necessarily true. The department itself has decreased I don't have the numbers in front of me, but more than 10% over the last 5 years, and I'll be happy to present more detail on that at the next meeting.
I think maybe our staff would love to get a hold of that and look at it.
Yeah.
The capital program has reduced by
23%.
23%.
Yeah. I think that some of the reason you may not be seeing this detail, and maybe I can do a better job presenting this in the May revise, is you see a lot of reduction in this department's budget during the May revise. What you're seeing in this presentation, in this chart here, is a comparison between what was enacted at the beginning of this year and what we're proposing for next year. So those cuts that occurred last year in the May revise aren't really apparent here.
Well, maybe our staff could sit down with you and get, I know we're looking at this at a high level down, but, you know, I am concerned that we're continuing to increase our overhead in your department, and we're not putting that money back on the streets. And so I'm going to look at this very closely during the course of this year. On page 5, you talked about the intelligent transportation. We approved, Will, you correct me, $500,000 in Prop 1B bonds for ITS? Or was it more?
I actually think it was less. I think it was about $250 million. It was originally proposed at a higher level, and it was reduced.
A portion of that was going to be used on Interstate 80 from Oakland through Berkeley, et cetera. And I know we had a presentation on a project in, I believe, the state of Washington, et cetera. I would like an update on what we're doing along that corridor if we're using intelligent transportation money for it at some point in time.
Okay.
And my last question and thoughts is when we approved, the voters approved Prop 1B, these were general obligation bonds, and we've been moving the peas under the shells right now, and somewhere along the line through the governor's last budget, and I guess approved by the legislature, we are now using weight fees, which would come directly to us and to you guys, to use that to pay off the debt on the bonds. That's not what the voters approved. I mean, the voters approved that these were general obligation bonds to be paid out of the general fund. And so all of a sudden, we just lost $992 million last year, and we're going to lose $1 billion in funds in this coming cycle. I got to think to my legislative friends over here that's highly illegal and is kind of a fraud on the public when they voted for general obligation bonds, and now they're being retired with our weight fees. Thank you.
Commissioner Gilmetti, thank you. I see other mics lit up as well. I saw Vice Chair Dunn and Commissioner Medaffer, and did I see Secretary Kelly as well?
Yeah.
And forgive me, I had stepped out just for a moment, so I'm not sure what the order was of those lights going on.
Secretary Kelly, and me.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dunn. Commissioner Medaffer?
Well, thank you. And I do have to say that, Commissioner Gilmetti, it's pretty difficult to disagree with anything that you've said, and I'm sure there's good responses. And the reason I raise that issue to amplify your point is the people of California, as we look into another way, all you have to do is look at that pie chart. I don't know if somebody could put it back up, slide 6. I think that it would be, right there. When you see that SHOP is going to go from 185, SHOP is going to go from 185 to 89, and as I recall, SHOP is already so much, it's a tiny number as it is. When you see that locals are going to go from 679 to 325, I mean, these are what fix our potholes, our local streets and roads, and there's not even enough money to fix the roads we have, let alone make improvements for transit, for active transportation, and all these other things. And then when you see the STIP going from, all of these things that are dropping, and then I think about the revenue, 18 cents a gallon, and because of, as pointed out, with gas pricing changing, now to 12.5 cents, it just proves that the current method of funding transportation with this gas tax is something that might have worked in the 50s, but it doesn't work in the 21st century. And so as we look to this road charge task force, which is going to be looking at something that's probably more important to the state, at least from a transportation funding standpoint, in decades. We have to make sure that whatever we end up adopting or approving, and who knows what that's going to be, that we turn over back to Secretary Kelly, that it's going to have to be something the public is going to believe the money's actually going to go to transportation. And so when you look at this, and I campaigned for Prop 1B, it is disheartening. And so I think we need to make sure that whatever we do, and I appreciate the fact that Assemblyman Frazier and Senator Bell are here to hear this as well, and I'm sure they agree. But we've got to figure out a way that we can keep faith with the public. So as we go forward, we can come up with a way to fund transportation, which right now is going backward at a rate that I think is critical, and at some point is really going to affect public safety in a way that many of us don't recognize, especially when you look at the local road levels.
Commissioner Medaffer, thank you. We're going to go to Vice Chair Dunn, Secretary Kelly, and then Executive Director Kimpton.
Thank you. I am probably going to make you a little crazier, Stephen, because I'm going to stay on this pie chart, but I want to look at it from the consumer perspective, because I have to figure out how to explain things to folks out there. When we talk about 12.5% falling gas prices, get it, all that, but in California, we've actually just added 15 cents on about, isn't that right, for cap and trade? And so if you took, and I know I'm mixing apples and oranges, so I totally get it, but when you look at the excise tax comparison for 15, 16, and then you tack into that where we're spending money for cap and trade, and then we're trying to do a road usage charge, and we're advocating for more weight fees, we've got to figure out a better story, because this is kind of confusing to folks. And the whole story, I don't think, is in this pie chart. Granted, it's just excise tax, but looking at from the seat of the consumer, does that make sense, what I've just shared?
Yeah, I think so. Perhaps at the next meeting we could talk about all of those issues together in one and talk about how they stack up.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
It would
for
be
my,
interesting.
Special slide of the month, next time I'll do that.
Yeah, I think that we got really lucky in California that gas prices did drop, because the rest of the nation has fuel prices under $2 a gallon, and California still is not there. Just at the time when we started with our cap and trade program. So I think we better, if things, as they typically do, go in cycles, we better think about this where we've got a bit of a breather to be able to explain what we're doing as we're trying to get more funding. And then when you add on top of that, I'm with Mr. Guilmedi 100%. It's very hard to explain where our funding is going down, but we're adding more positions. It's very hard to explain that. So I look forward to continued dialogue on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Vice Chair Dunn, thank you. Secretary Kelly, and then Executive Director Kimpton.
Thank you. Stephen, I was hoping you can clarify a couple things on the charts. First is on the state operations figure that's up $97 million, you said 3/4 of that was salary and benefits.
That's correct, yes.
That increase would not be limited to Caltrans, right? Because it would in the context of a Caltrans budget, but I just want to spend a minute on how salaries and benefits adjust one way or the other, and that's through a bargaining process that involves bargaining units that sometimes represent one department or many departments. But a bargaining unit makes a deal through the collective bargaining one way or the other about salaries and benefits, right?
That's correct, and they would apply to all departments regardless
That's right.
of where they're.
So I just want to make the point that this is not a Caltrans-specific issue. This is an issue about how agreements are made between labor and management and state government, and here it has an impact on our department like it will on any other department where those bargaining units are effective. So I first want to clarify that point. Secondly, on the overall staff size of the department, I recollect that something like in the last 3 to 5 years, it's down roughly 3,000 PYs.
That's correct.
And 80% of that is in the capital outlay program.
Yes, the cap outlay program itself has decreased about 23% over that.
And while we have targeted PY expansions here for certain functions like building a queue of projects, so if money comes in, we have projects ready to go. We expect this spring that we will see a further reduction of capital outlay unless something changes, dramatically on funding.
That's correct. And you know what, the process for adjusting staffing for the work directly related to capital outlay is a process that's offset from the governor's budget by about 3 months. So we'll see those in April and May.
But is it true that we've generally had each budget cycle of the last 3, 4, 5 years a steady decline in the capital outlay staff?
And staff of the entire department.
Okay, so 3,000 down, maybe 80% in the capital outlay area. We're likely to see that further this spring. We'd probably see a net reduction in Caltrans staff in this budget like we have in the last 3 or 4 downward.
Again, I've got my fingers crossed for a huge increase in revenue.
I said short of a dramatic change in our revenue.
Otherwise, I expect to see decreases overall. And I will provide to the commission staff and to the commissioners a history of Caltrans staffing for the last 10 years, so it's really clear what we're talking about here.
And then I want to jump to the more complicated, because it's all so easy in transportation finance, but I want to jump to the more complicated pie charts and just ask a couple of questions about this. First, I think it's really important that everybody understands why there's a reduction with the change from 18 cents to 12, which is an estimate at this point. Help me through this because I'm aging and my memory's shot. But when the legislature enacted a gas tax swap a few years ago.
2010.
What's that?
2010.
2000. See, my memory. Good thing you're here. In 2010, the excise tax, essentially, the 18-cent excise tax, essentially took the place of what was the sales tax.
Yes, it did. It replaced the sales tax, and at that time, it was 17.9 cents, and increased to 18, then 21.5, and then down to 18 again.
And because the legislature, where I worked at the time, required, I believe, a 2/3 vote to get the swap bill out of the legislature, at least the affirming time we did it. They needed revenue neutrality in the package of the bill, and so every year there is a true-up, if you will, that the Board of Equalization forms, and if the sales tax would have generated more, the replaced excise tax would go up, and if the sales tax generated less, the replaced excise tax would drop. And that was an annual adjustment they performed, right?
That's correct. So it's completely revenue neutral regardless of whether it's an excise tax or a sales tax.
And so this then relates to your note about the huge drop in the price of gas at the pump, because had we not done the gas tax swap and you left the sales tax in place, with the price decrease, we would have seen a reduction in sales tax revenue coming in to the state coffers.
That's correct. There's a timing difference here, but it would have essentially rendered the same result.
So whether it's a sales tax revenue or an excise tax revenue, the reduction would have been the same because of the drop of the gas tax price.
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, on the weight fee question, this may be more complicated because this is where my memory is really getting taxed. But the first question I just wanted to clarify, the weight fees that are being dedicated to debt service, that's debt service on what bond?
It's debt service on Proposition 1B bonds and also some older bonds, Prop 192 that paid for seismic retrofit of the state's bridges and some local bridges, and also Proposition 116, which was a rail and transit bond.
Are they all transportation projects?
Yes.
Okay. And then when the weight fees were used for debt service, what backfilled it in the state highway account?
So the backfill for the weight fees is, in fact, that portion of the price-based excise tax that you see here, and I'm guessing that's a pinkish color, labeled as weight fees.
Okay.
Salmon color.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kelly. We're going to go to Executive Director Kempton and then to Commissioner Inman, and then, if possible, we do have a very full agenda today to move on to the next item of Part 2 of the Stephen Keck Show.
I'm happy to move on when you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. And what I would like to do relative to this information, it's generally covered in the governor's budget. It talks about the drop in terms of larger numbers, is to explain just what Secretary Kelly included in his remarks, but also to cite the implications with respect to the amount going for local streets and roads, the amount going to the STIP, and the amount going for the SHOP program, and advise the appropriate legislative leaders of this information, recognizing that this is an estimate at this point, and we won't see until the March time frame the actual numbers by the Board of Equalization. But I think folks need to understand the implications of this from a transportation perspective without suggesting any, sort of a fix or anything. I just think we need to get this information distributed. And I'd like to prepare a letter for your signature for that purpose.
Thank you, Executive Director Kempton. I think the last light that I do, well, no, there's one more after Commissioner Inman. We'll hear from Assembly Chair Frazier.
I just have a quick question, Stephen. Tomorrow you're going to be making a presentation to the kickoff meeting of the road user project. And I don't know that we saw in our packet what your explanation is going to be, but to build on Commissioner Medaffer's and Commissioner Dunn's comments on keeping it understandable, I think it is so important for all of those members who come from different walks of life to really kind of get as clear of understanding as they possibly can. So think about it tonight, okay?
I will do so.
Great, thank you. And Chairman Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Secretary Kelly and I have had this discussion on the last bullet of page 5, challenge accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, Stephen, you need to walk around the building once, so you're ready for item 17.
I'm good.
Good man.
Piece of cake.
Thank you, sir.
So now we're going to talk about the 2016 fund estimate adoption, or rather the overview and the schedule for adoption of the fund estimate. So the fund estimate itself is probably the most important document that I have a role in. It is it's required by statute for the department and the commission to do this estimate of resources that are considered likely to be available for the next 5 years to fund the STIP and the SHOP. We do it every 2 years, and it's an estimate that lasts 5 years. The California Transportation Commission's role in this is to provide guidance to the department and on the fund estimate, especially with regards to the assumptions that we'll be using with the fund estimate, and I'll talk a little bit about the schedule for that later on. The Commission is required by law to adopt the fund estimate by August 15th of each odd-numbered year. So we're in the year that we'll be adopting the fund estimate, and there's a lot of work to do between now and then. And then the STIP is another step in this process. The STIP is adopted consistent with the findings of the fund estimate, and of course the STIP comes to the Commission next year in April. These are the statutory due dates for the fund estimate. The department is required to present a draft fund estimate to the Commission no later than July 15th of each odd-numbered year. By August 15th of each odd-numbered year, the CTC must adopt the fund estimate. And then, of course, because this is closely related to the STIP must be adopted and submitted to the legislature by April 1st of even-numbered years. Down at the bottom of this slide, there's a little bullet that says that the Commission can delay adoption of the fund estimate from the August 15th deadline if the Commission believes there's information out there that warrant the delay, especially information related to expenditures or funding. This is a graph that shows how each fund estimate overlaps. So the last fund estimate the Commission took action on was the 2014 fund estimate, which was adopted in August of 2013. The 2014 fund estimate and all fund estimates are 5 years long, so each fund estimate overlaps the prior fund estimates by 2 years, or in the case of alternating fund estimates, but there's a 1 year overlap. So if you see on the chart here, 2012 fund estimate shares 3 years with the 2014 fund estimate and 1 year with the 2016 fund estimate. The purpose of this chart is to show that we're not making an estimate and walking away. We're updating this on a biennial basis to make sure that our revenue and expenditure projections are on track. And this is to ensure that we don't do a lot of heavy swings in terms of shop and skip and pack. The fund estimate includes estimates of resources and expenditures for these major accounts: the state highway account, which is funded from excise taxes on gasoline that we just talked about; the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which is funded by Vince and the money he has in his back pockets, which actually comes from excise taxes on gasoline collected by the state and remitted to the federal government. The public transportation account is funded from sales taxes, primarily from diesel sales tax. And of course, we have the remnants of Proposition 1A and Proposition 1B that will be included in the fund estimate. Statutes require that the fund estimate must assume no changes in existing state and federal revenues, at least in terms of how the law states those revenues. This, I think, might be very important if we're looking at some sort of revenue change, or the legislature is looking at a revenue change as we move forward. We want to make sure that the fund estimate includes any of that change, but we can't do so until it's in law. The fund estimate also requires that we take into account all the expenditures of the department in terms of administration, maintenance, and operations, existing shop and local assistance projects, as well as existing STIP projects. And the way that looks is something like this. We start with available cash balances. We add in anticipated revenues. We subtract out the department's support of the program, local assistance, maintenance of our highway system, and of course the existing commitments for ongoing capital projects, and we end up with a capacity that's available for programming. Now this is intended to be a fairly quick overview because the fund estimate is essentially an 8-month-long process. We've started on it in November, so we're going to come to the Commission and several times over the next few months, beginning with this kickoff presentation. And again, in March, we'll be presenting draft assumptions to the Commission, and we'll hear feedback at that point, and then we'll bring revised assumptions to the Commission for adoption in May. On June 24th, we'll be presenting a draft fund estimate to the Commission based on what we know at that time. That's the Commission meeting closest to the statutory date. And then August 26th is our proposal for the adoption date of the fund estimate. And it's worth noting that August 26th is a bit past, it's 11 days past the statutory deadline. The reason for this is because that's when the Commission meeting is. If we were to adopt the fund estimate or attempt to adopt the fund estimate at the meeting prior to August, that would be the June 24th meeting, and that would be before the budget would be signed. So we're recommending and asking for the Commission to adopt a schedule that delays adoption of the fund estimate by 11 days so that we can ensure that we're including any budget changes in the final fund estimate. And I think that's probably the end of this brief overview of the fund estimate. And as I mentioned, we'll be coming back in March when we'll start to get into the details of some of the assumptions behind the fund estimate.
Questions on item 16 on the fund estimate to Stephen? Stephen, this is a trilogy. Why don't you show us part 3 in the trilogy, number item 17?
Before I do, and I don't know that it's my place to ask for an action, but I'll defer to Laurel.
Yes, Commissioners, item 16 is an action item. We're asking for adoption of the schedule that the department has put forward in the book item, and staff recommends you approve that.
Great. Laurel, thank you for the recommendation. It's moved by Commissioner Taglioni, seconded by Vice Chair Dunn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Executive Director Kempton, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, it's just simply to remind you that you needed to approve that schedule adjustment.
We're glad you're here, sir. Thank you. And we're going to move on to part 3.
Part 3 is the shortest part of my 3-part show today. This is the draft active transportation program fund estimate. Now, this one is a bit different than our regular fund estimates. This one is specific to the active transportation program, which is on a completely different cycle. Your book item has the draft fund estimate as proposed. This slide shows a detailed breakdown of just one of the years that you see in your book item. The reason for that is that each of the 4 years shown in the fund estimate in your book item is the same. In other words, the funding for this program has not changed. It's the same number as was adopted in the last fund estimate. This fund estimate is the same. This is funded primarily from federal apportionments, which have not changed. I've heard a few concerns raised because of a change in the budget, in the governor's budget, that shows a drop of about $6 million for the active transportation program. The reason for that drop is that when we built the budget more than a year ago, we did not have the appropriate apportionment levels from the federal government at the time. So we built a number that we knew would be plenty high enough to incorporate whatever we got. And now we were able to include the actual apportionment levels in the budget. I want to make it very clear, though, there's no change to the program capacity. There's no change to our ability to fund all the projects that we have. It's just a sort of a technical change on the budgeting side of things. So that's why you see this fund estimate being exactly the same as prior fund estimates. Again, this slide shows the breakdown of the different funding types and how they're split between large UZAs, small urban and rural, and then statewide any area programs, and those are all part of the ATP program that will be adopted later on. And here's the next step. So we'll bring the final fund estimate to the Commission in March with any changes that may occur, although I really don't expect any. And then also in March, the Commission, I believe, will be adopting guidelines for that program at the same time. And that's actually it for this one.
Any questions of Stephen on this information item? Seeing none. Stephen, thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on to item 18, our draft 2015 Active Transportation Program Guidelines. Laurel Jansen.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an information item. We're presenting the draft of the 2015 Active Transportation Program Guidelines. The initial guidelines for 2014 were adopted in March 2014, and we are allowed to amend those as long as we have one hearing. So what we're doing now is proposing some changes. Commission staff held 2 workshops with the Active Transportation Work Group, with the latest on January 8th. Both were well attended. We had very good input. We had some generally agreed upon proposals, including deleting the match requirement and instead giving points for leveraging, and changing the definition of disadvantaged community to better align with some of the cap and trade programs. The workshop summaries are posted on our website under Programs ATP. In addition to the workshops, we've received lots of letters and emails. We have a sampling attached to the book item, and there are some late ones that came in also that you should have in your packet. We have, as I said, a lot of suggestions. Some of those remain under consideration. We have not incorporated all that we may want to incorporate. We have many proposed changes in these draft guidelines. Some of them include, like I said, the match requirement has changed, the disadvantaged community definition. We added a requirement that a PSR or PID must be done before programming an infrastructure project. We added flexibility to move funds between allocated components. This is a similar flexibility that we have in the STIP program. We've clarified some roles and responsibilities, and we've added some language regarding contingency lists for the large MPOs. As I said, this remains a draft. We are open for additional comments and suggestions. Depending on what we receive in the way of comments and suggestions, we may hold an additional workshop in February. We're waiting to see if that's necessary. The final guidelines for 2015 will be brought to the Commission for adoption at the March meeting. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Laurel, first, you've done just an excellent job on this. Questions of Laurel before we take several people who would like to speak to the Commission. Yes, Commissioner Arp.
Yes, I did notice the one change relative to changing the matching fund requirement. I was wondering what the thinking was behind that revision.
Well, I will say that very few projects actually required a match the way the guidelines were originally adopted. So any project that was a Safe Routes to School or was in a disadvantaged community didn't require a match. And most projects that came forward didn't require a match. So a little selfishly, it was kind of a problem for those of us who were evaluating and to determine the staff recommendations to make sure that we made sure that the projects that needed it actually had it. There were so many that didn't require it. In addition, we did have an issue with projects that were concerned about being competitive if they were not in a disadvantaged community. And that was a major concern, I think, in our last cycle. So we wanted to incentivize match, but not require it. So what we've done is taken out the requirement and instead added points so that we're still incentivizing match. It would be incentivized for everyone, not just for those who are not disadvantaged, and hopefully will give us a better balanced program in the long run.
So if a project did have some matching funds, that would score a little bit more in their favor, basically?
Correct. And we did not do that last time. They didn't really get any benefit to having a match, and we would like to give more incentive for a match.
Okay, thanks.
And Laurel, could you remind us on the amount of the percent, the minimum percent that goes to planning or non-infrastructure improvements?
Well, for non-infrastructure, in general, those are eligible projects. There is a language, or certainly in the last cycle, there was language in the budget bill requiring a minimum of $7.2 million per year for non-infrastructure. I believe there's some similar language in the proposed budget for this year also. In addition, we also, in our guidelines, had said that we would set aside up to 5% to do plans, bicycle, pedestrian plans, for disadvantaged communities. Those are the communities that are least likely to have a plan. They can't afford it. So we set aside up to 5% to do plans in those communities. That was an item that was discussed at the workshops. There's a lot of support to keep that in the guidelines, but there was discussion about reassessing that in the future as these communities get their plans. We should be able to take that out in the future, or at least drastically reduce it.
Thank you. I'll be speaking more on that later. We have a number of speaker cards. I'm going to ask, one, the speakers that I name, and I'll be calling you up in threes, to please come up so that we don't lose transition time. And two, each of you will have up to 90 seconds. Remember that less is more. With that, if we could ask our first three speakers to come forward, Jenny Ward-Waller, Phoebe Secton, and Erica Whitcomb. Again, you'll have up to 90 seconds from when your lips start moving.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thanks for taking our comments. I want to thank staff for their hard work on the ATP guidelines and all the thoughtful discussion we've had in the workshops. I did want to speak in support of the Safe Routes to School aspect of the program and the non-infrastructure funding specifically. That's been a really valuable incentive for projects that are broader, have broader community benefits, but also consider school travel and the safety of children. I also want to speak in support of the planning funds. Very, very few communities in the state have pedestrian plans. A few more have bicycle plans, but that's still pretty limited. We need this planning money to make sure that we have thoughtful projects statewide that are supported by the community. I also want to support the next two speakers, the comments that they make. So thank you.
Student scholarship.
Let everyone notice that Jeannie only took half of her 90 seconds. She gets a gold star today. With that, we're going to Phoebe Sexton, then Erica Whitcomb, and Wendy Alfson. Phoebe, welcome.
Phoebe Seaton, Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. Thanks so much. As Jeannie noted, we're in strong support of planning dollars. A lot of especially less resourced areas really rely on those dollars to create the active transportation plans, pedestrian plans, bicycle plans, and that money is critical. We are especially concerned with disadvantaged communities and the extent to which these guidelines really direct money that is nominally benefiting disadvantaged communities to those communities. An example of this, I don't know if you are all aware, but we've raised criticism about a project in the Coachella Valley called CV Link, which was granted 70% credit for benefiting disadvantaged communities, and our critique is that it actually doesn't benefit disadvantaged communities to any extent, certainly not to that great an extent, and we want to make sure that the guidelines that direct money to disadvantaged communities and ensure that those that are benefiting disadvantaged communities are tying to a direct, discrete, identifiable benefit for those communities. And we are also want to make sure that the guidelines and subsequently the application questions ensure equitable distribution throughout the region, especially concerned about the San Joaquin Valley, which we don't think was adequately represented in this year's awards.
Phoebe, your time is up. Thank you. And Laurel, did you want to respond to the comment about whether the disadvantaged communities language is fleshed out enough for us evaluating these to know?
Well, I will say it is difficult for an evaluator to know if someone is stretching the truth when they're talking about their disadvantaged community, whether they're benefiting. That is a difficult thing for an evaluator to confirm. And so to some extent, we're sort of trusting applicants. And I'm not really sure how to really go out there and ensure that without almost doing an audit in a way of these projects. And when you have 770 applications, that was just something we didn't have time to do. And so that is an issue. I'm not really sure how to address it at this point.
Laurel, thank you, because you've expressed that at hearings too. It's language in the legislation without a real way to audit whether or not that is accurate. I see a colleague, Commissioner Burke.
I just wondered if it would be possible to at least put some county status and some of the numbers that come from, some of them might be old, that they include in their application, which would give some idea of exactly the percentage of disadvantage, percentage of poverty, where they stand in terms of the poverty line, and something like that would be a very simple thing for them to provide.
And that is something that was in the application that we asked them to do, and we did try to assign the points proportionally. If they were, benefiting, a portion of their project was benefited, we tried to do that in a proportional way. But certainly we can work on strengthening that in the application.
Of course, I don't know whether there's any measure for disadvantage. Well, whether if that's a word of art even.
Yes, we have things in the guidelines and in the application. There's several ways you can identify yourself as disadvantaged or the areas that you're benefiting as disadvantaged. And so we try to give some flexibility, but we do have some very specific measures in there, plus some flexibility for an agency to describe how they are benefiting a disadvantaged community.
I was just sort of surprised when this issue was raised, that there was some question of whether or not a grant went to a disadvantaged community. I mean, because usually it's, you look at educational rates and graduation rates, you look at income per capita and some of those things. So I was really kind of surprised at that. I didn't think that was going to be a big issue we'd face.
Well, I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, this is the first time we've really had this kind of a requirement. And so I think as we move forward, we're going to learn as we go how to make that better.
Yeah, maybe per capita income, I don't know what to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke and Laurel, for your response. We're going to hear next from Erica Whitcomb, then Wendy Alfson, and then I think it says Sarkis Kadak. And anyone's name that I butcher, I apologize in advance, and I know you'll correct me when you get to the microphone. Erica Whitcomb?
Hi, thank you. Erica Whitcomb on behalf of PolicyLink, and just wanted to extend a huge thank you and appreciation to the Commission and the staff for all their hard work on the development of the guidelines and the multiple opportunities to provide public input. On the issue with benefit to disadvantaged communities, I think one of the challenges, because projects do not necessarily have to be in the communities and there's no real distance requirement in the program, so oftentimes in the applications it was difficult to see for projects that are located quite far from these communities how there's the direct benefit. Our recommendation is that there be some sort of criteria or language included in the guidelines under benefit to disadvantaged communities that defines projects that benefit as demonstrating how they actually connect these communities to critical resources or amenities. We also want to extend our strong support for resources for planning, especially for disadvantaged communities. There's 543 disadvantaged jurisdictions that often get left out of community-wide active transportation planning and that really rely on these funds. And also just our huge support for this program and that it continue to grow and for the allocation to Safe Routes to Schools. Thank you.
Wendy, thank you. We're going to Sarkis Kadak, Ken Cow, and Philip Chu.
Wendy Alsam with California Walks. We've worked with the development of this program and its predecessors over the last 10 years. I want to thank everyone for all of the hard work. We'd like to suggest that under number 19 on page 16 of tab 18 of the guidelines, that Project Evaluation Committee be amended and changed to Program Implementation and Application Evaluation Committee. The legislation originally provided that public stakeholders be involved throughout the process. And so the committee, the way it's worded, sounds like it's only going to be the reviewers and the review scoring process instead of the ongoing implementation. This question that just has been raised regarding how you define benefit, where when you've already pretty well defined disadvantaged communities is a good example, and the proposed change regarding the minimums is another that would benefit from the ongoing work group process that the Commission just used with the guidelines. And Caltrans and the Commission together or separately could do that. We'd also like to support...
Wendy, your time is up. Thank you.
...the prior comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And again, sir, I think I butchered your name, so I'm hoping you can fix it. But I think I'm reading Sarkis Kadak, then Ken Cow.
I apologize. I probably did not write very well on the form. So, good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Sarkis Kadak with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. It's nice to see all of you today. The Association of Governments is appreciative of the opportunity to provide comments to the Commission today. We really appreciate a lot of the changes that staff made into the guidelines. And the Central Coast Coalition, which we're a member of and consists of the RTPAs on the Central Coast, submitted a comment letter in December and is included as an attachment. We had several comments and recommendations in the letter, but I'm just going to highlight one that was really important to us. And that was recommendation 1, which is to provide an enhanced and dedicated role for regional transportation planning agencies in the selection of projects. An enhanced role by RTPAs would be beneficial and we feel like would improve and add value to the process, as we would provide a local knowledge of projects that are being submitted from our region, and we would help identify how they are meeting the goals of the active transportation program. As you're aware, RTPAs and FPOs are responsible for developing RTPs and sustainable community strategies, which involve extensive public review and identify regional priorities. And so a screening process would help ensure projects and applications are complete with our SCS. And so just in conclusion, that was the one comment I wanted to highlight, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sarkis. Next, Kenneth Cow, Philip Chu, followed by Stephen Patchen. Kenneth, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Gometti. Excuse me, Cordino.
We Italians all look and sound alike.
Right,
You complimented me and you insulted Jim, so please continue.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm with Kenneth Cow with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. I just wanted to thank staff, Lori and Laura and Laurel, for all their work on the ATP Cycle 2 guidelines. I specifically also wanted to mention that we had submitted a comment letter, and we're very happy that a number of those comments were incorporated, including keeping of the leveraging of funds and incentivizing leveraging. Also making the disadvantaged communities Cal Enviro screen very consistent with the cap and trade at 25%, as well as maintaining the define your own option. In the Bay Area, as you may know, we have a metric called the Communities of Concern, which is our metric for disadvantaged communities. We've done a lot of data and background on that. And so we're happy that that can be used as a define your own option for disadvantaged. So with that, I'd like to again thank you and Commission staff and support the proposed guidelines. Thank you.
Kenneth, thank you. Philip Chu, Stephen Patchen, followed by Shirley Medina.
Thank you, Commissioner. Philip Chu with San Bernardino Associated Governments. Would like to take this opportunity to thank staff and Commission who have been working with us diligently on revising the ATP guidelines in the past few months. Sandbeck would like to echo the support of our neighboring county, which you will be hearing soon, on a modified allocation process for ATP. Streamlining the allocation process will especially help small local agencies with limited resources to prepare multiple allocation requests on different phases of the same project. So Sandbeck suggests the allocation process that is similar to the SHOP minor program, which have been very successful in the past. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Stephen Patchen, Shirley Medina, followed by Renee DeVore-Oki. Stephen, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm joined at the podium by staff from member cities, counties of SCAG, a symbolic show of support for SCAG's comments. Before I get into it, I'd like to thank CTC staff for their great work in coming up with the draft and revisions and so forth. SCAG supports the continued funding of planning projects, including the development of community-wide and district plans, such as first, last mile, and bike share plans. Out of the 191 SCAG member cities, 93 have bicycle plans, but only 27 have pedestrian plans. And this is important because these plans are very critical to the input of our regional transportation plan and SCS. So the continued planning really benefits the continued development of future RTPs and SCSs. Also, SCAG recommends that the Commission consider alternative methods for allocation, the allocation process. The current process for federally funded projects requires a repetitive process from the federal level. In addition, the process can inflict hardship on smaller projects with smaller budgets. And then finally, with the disadvantaged communities, SCAG supports the prioritization of disadvantaged communities and looks forward to continuing to work with the CTC and Caltrans to ensure technical assistance is available to the most severely disadvantaged communities.
And your time is up.
Plan deliver projects. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Stephen and Company will be followed by Shirley Medina and Renee DeVore-Oki.
Good afternoon, Shirley Medina with the Riverside County Transportation Commission. Definitely want to support the streamlining of the allocation process, and I know you'll continue to hear that. But another thing I wanted to share with you is that after Cycle 1, RCTC convened all our project sponsors that were awarded ATP funds, and one thing we found out is that they were ready to go, but they didn't know what color of money they were going to get, state or federal. They're two different processes. Federal, of course, is a little bit more cumbersome, or a lot more cumbersome. So therefore, if we could find a way to designate state-only or federal funds earlier on before the allocation, that would really help the cities get started. And that's what we're all trying to do, is get these projects that are relatively minor and can be done 6 to 8 months. We want to get them going as quick as possible, and we know we can. So there's just a little bit of tweaking that we need to do, but I really think we can do it. Thank you.
Shirley Medina, thank you. Renee DeVore-Oki, followed by Barbara O'Keefe. Renee, welcome.
All right. Renee DeVore-Oki speaking on behalf of the regional agencies. As I noted earlier, we've been closely tracking this program and participating in workshops. So we have these several consensus points that we've all reached as large and small agencies. First of all, after the selection, we would, as RTPAs, like to help inform the programming of these projects. So after project selection and prior to programming, we know our local agencies, and we can help facilitate, as local agencies, regional, similar with our delivery practices. I'd also like to second what Sarkis Kotchaks had mentioned earlier about an RTPA enhanced role, specifically in the 10% pot. Once again, we know our agencies and their projects, and we can closely look at our plans to see how these projects can deliver and if they are indeed implementing what we're trying to move forward with in terms of active transportation. Additionally, we want to thank staff for the contingent list for the large MPO portion. But we'd also like to continue to support the idea of having a contingent list for the statewide pot as you move forward. Additionally, I want to thank staff for the inclusion of allowing savings at the time of allocation. And noting what Philip had said earlier, as well as Shirley, we look forward to any opportunities to streamline delivery of these programs, including delegated allocation authority or any actions that we can take moving forward to perhaps get these projects going in advance of money being available. That was my call. Thank you.
Renee, thank you. And I believe the last card we have turned in is Barbara O'Keefe.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioners. Barbara O'Keefe, Tehama County Transportation Commission. I appreciate this opportunity. The ATP program is in its infancy, and it's critical to have a level playing field. As such, I respectfully request to ask the Commission not to incentivize the points, as smaller agencies will be at a disadvantage. At the first cycle, only 3% of the statewide pot went to rural agencies. And since the program is in its infancies, I think that maybe this is something that could be delayed till other cycles. I know that there's a lot of good projects out there, and I think we can bring money to the table if we have the ability. We support the streamlining, and in addition to the caution on additional leveraging, we request that the scoring points be increased for the increasing of biking and walking from 30 to 50. I think and this wasn't a consensus, but these are projects that increase mobility, and we would like the scoring criteria to reflect that. And agencies that have the process to do a lot of public outreach certainly do a great job at that. Thank you.
Barbara, thank you. I believe that closes the question cards that we have. Laurel?
Yes, I want to just add that we are looking at a lot of these suggestions. Some of these are being handled in the application. For example, asking for the state-only or funding up front, we're going to be adding that into the application. We are the enhanced role for the regional agencies. That's something that is already in the guidelines. We do ask that all applicants send their applications, a copy of their applications to their regional agency. And what we have offered to do is post a list of all of the applications received as soon as we have it completed, so those agencies can look to see which applications are in their area and whether they've received that application, because we will consider every comment from those agencies regarding those projects as we do our evaluation.
Laurel, thank you again for your hard work on this. I'm going to open it up to Commission colleagues unless they have comments they'd like to make or questions of our staff. Commissioner Burke.
I have to make a comment. This has been wonderful. It's got through. I mean, I expected to have this room full of people who had questions and problems and issues, and I think it really is just outstanding that it was possible to initiate a program like this and be able to meet the needs as we see them being met. Nothing is ever perfect. And starting a new program like this is very, very difficult, and this is a tremendous commendation to the staff that worked on this and everyone that has put this together, and for it to be this successful. I consider it successful because you had so few people who really had problems, because it could have been just magnificent. The numbers of people who had comments and concerns and felt that they were shortchanged. So congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Inman?
I know, Laurel, that we have safety as one of the criteria, but I just want to encourage all of us to really think safety first. And I continue to worry as we further and further expand our active transportation, and I just think that we can't minimize the importance of safety on all sides. And so whatever we can do as a commission to help you in those efforts, I think we'd like to. And I think Caltrans has somebody working specifically on that. But whether it's pedestrian, bicycle, or just, when we do our complete streets and we try to mix all kinds of uses together, I think safety really needs to be elevated, and we constantly have to remind ourselves.
Great. Other commissioner comments? Okay. Laurel, thank you again for your excellent work. I'll be brief, and I'm a salmon swimming upstream here. Many speakers were praising and actually even asking for expansion of planning money. I am very concerned about that. We have very limited dollars to actually make improvements where the need greatly outstrips the limited amount of money we have. That's one. And two, if a community can't even afford a plan, how are they ever going to afford building the project that the plan reflects? So I, for one, am very concerned about that pot at all, let alone suggestions that we should grow that pot. And I just want to be upfront with everyone about that, so that when items come, if it's still a minimum of 5%, if we ever go above 5%, I would be voting against that, and I just wouldn't want anyone to be surprised. Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Art?
I am with you.
I'm glad there's at least 2 salmon in the stream then. Thank you, sir.
Well, let me add real quick. We did put in some language that we would reassess that in the future, and it would be an up to 5%. It's really kind of a maximum, not a minimum.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated by at least, I think, 2 commissioners. With that, let's move on to item 19, Caltrans Transportation Asset Management Plan. Stephen and Kome?
Yes, commissioners. New legislation, SB 486, requires the department, in consultation with the commission, to prepare a robust asset management plan to guide selection of SHOP projects. The asset management plan may be prepared in phases from the 2016 SHOP through the 2020 SHOP. In connection with the asset management plan, the Commission is to do the following. Number 1, adopt targets and performance measures. And number 2, review and approve the asset management plan. Now we have Kame who will unveil the veil on the asset management plan that the department is working on.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordino.
Welcome.
I'll put it up.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordino and Commissioners. Kome Adjisa with Caltrans. I'm here today to just briefly introduce the asset management plan that we've been working on, with intent that we will have a more formal presentation of the plan and the rollout of the plan at your March meeting. Our asset management plan has been driven by a number of things. First, it came out of our program review process in 2012 that we needed to have a better handle on our assets. And since then, MAP 21 had also established some requirements, very specific requirements for all states to have an asset management plan and guiding the expenditure of federal funds on transportation. And then more recently, like Stephen said, SB 486 adds also to the drivers of our need for asset management plan. But even more recently, the governor's budget, the proposed budget, also clearly articulated the need for an asset management plan as an element of a program at the department. Now, MAP 21 specifically had some, among other things, some requirements, and the minimum requirements included having an asset management plan that looked at pavement and bridge at a minimum, but also providing some objectives and measures, life cycle cost, financial plan, and investment strategies. Now, that was further, and Vince talked about that. We're still waiting for some of the rules on that, so we are anticipating all of those as we develop the asset management plan. And we're really in the process of doing that. What we would need to do, based on SB 486, is to come back to the Commission, knowing that the Commission has a stronger role now based on SB 486, and look forward to having the Commission work with us in defining what focus areas might be appropriate, what targets and performance measures might be appropriate as we develop the plan. And also note that there's some distinction between what MAP 21 is asking us to do. In fact, it goes beyond what SB 486 is asking us to do. So we want to be able to note all of those when we come back to you in March with a fuller plan. To date, where we are is, like I said, we began our asset management planning process back in 2013. And we went beyond the two minimum assets that the feds were looking for. We also identified culverts and ITS elements because those have become very important elements as we look at system performance and fix it first as policy positions. In looking at those four asset classes, we have a number of asset classes. We don't have the wherewithal today to start with all of those asset classes. So we want to make sure that we build a plan on a solid foundation of those four asset classes: pavement, bridge, ITS elements for our system performance, and culverts, because those are really risk elements in the system. When we come back to the Commission in March, what I hope you will see from our presentation at the time for your consideration and direction is some more details on the Phase 1 asset management plan called for in SB 486. We would also be introducing what we are calling the SHOP pilot project, which is really a decision-making tool that we are in the works, in the process of developing right now, that allows us to take input in terms of objectives and performance measures and use this tool to make decisions on project priorities with the intent that we want to be as transparent as possible in how projects are selected. We want to come back to you to talk about how Phase 1 asset management plan relates to the 2016 SHOP. And at a minimum, on those four asset classes that I talked about, we want to be able to demonstrate to you the conditions and locations of those elements, what the life cycle analysis potential might be as we look at those, the goals, objectives, and performance measures, and what performance gaps we will be anticipating, along with investment strategies and funding scenarios. So that's sort of the overall presentation that I have today, just to introduce you to the concept, the program that we're building behind the asset management plan, and hope that when we come back in March, we'll have more to offer and hopefully take some more direction from you. That's all I have.
Kome, thank you. Stephen, did you want to weigh in?
Kome, you mentioned that you're going to be looking at 4 asset classes right now. How many asset classes are there in total?
I couldn't tell you right now. I know it's well over 20. I mean, when you start to look at different assets on the system, and really it goes beyond just what's on the highways. If you look at our rail cars, those are assets. So when we start to talk about assets, when you boil it down, there's a lot that goes into a transportation asset management plan.
And are you going to propose to the Commission which assets should be looked first, or have you just chosen those yourselves?
We are hoping to propose that those 4 assets be looked for first because of the high risk and also because of the policy direction behind. High risk of the culverts, You could have a good pavement. If the culvert fails, the road becomes useless, and that's...
No, I understand why you chose them. I just want to know if you're going to be asking the commission to approve that these are the right four to start with or not.
Hopefully, yeah, we're hoping to demonstrate to the commission that these are the right four to start with because of the capacity that we have right now, with the intent that we have a program that adds more assets to it. Yeah.
And when do you plan on doing that?
Plan on doing which part of it?
The asking of which assets to look at first.
We're coming back in March.
Are there questions of Co-Mayor Stephen on this item? May I suggest, Co-Mayor, that perhaps you and Stephen can meet offline and have a conversation about which assets might be of most interest to the Commission with which to start? Stephen, would you mind having that conversation offline?
No problem.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Any other comments or questions? Susan, did you have a comment?
You know, Commissioners, the one area that I'll be looking for in March is it's very important that we know the schedule in which the Commission will be asked to adopt performance measures and targets for the asset management plan. So that's, you know, it's just the timing that goes into informing the shop. So there's a time concern here, and that's, you know, something that would be very important that we see in March.
That's going to be part of the presentation in March, is an overall implementation schedule and what the major milestones will be actually between 2015 and 2020.
Seeing no other questions, Co-Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, seeing one more question.
Co-Mayor, I have a question for you. In the presentation earlier today, we saw a budget line item for changing out some of the equipment to comply with the greenhouse gas reduction. So is that integrated into your asset management prioritization? Or how do we pull all those pieces together?
So it's a good question. It's a little bit more involved. Each one of those asset classes, like our vehicles, whether it's the fleet vehicles or even our rail cars, there's asset management going on in those silos. What the plan intends to do is to bring them into focus where we're doing a multi-objective decision-making on assets across the board to the extent that funding silos don't constrain that. The green fleet that you're talking about, that's happening in its program right now, in the equipment program, and we have a very strong, very good handle on that particular asset class by the program manager in the equipment program. And so we're trading those out. As we trade those out, we're bringing more green fleet into it. But we're not using that in the asset management plan right now.
Well, I think maybe that gets a little confusing then when we talk about list of assets, because at the Energy Commission we have AB, I think it's 758, which is the zero energy from all our existing buildings. So at some point, I'm assuming that all of our facilities also we're going to have some planning to reduce the emissions on those too.
Yeah,
so
the absence of those particular assets in the asset management plan that we're proposing doesn't in any way suggest that they're not being managed and there's no planning behind them. I think what we're trying to do with the asset management plan is to be successful with what makes the most sense for the system first, and then as we have more capacity, we can bring a tool on board that allows us to look at multiple assets. I mean, our buildings are one of them. The fleet vehicles you're talking about are some. There are so many different asset classes, and we'll try maybe to also bring that into the conversation in March so you have a sense of the array of assets that we're talking about.
Mr. Chair, if I can add on to that. We have a facility plan, and that facility plan does come to the Commission for a briefing when that gets finalized. We have an equipment plan as well as alternative fuels, replacement of aging equipment, alternative fuels, and greening that fleet. 486, I think, specifically spoke to asset management when how we invested our SHOP program and getting more sophisticated in how we do that. And I think that that's where we're having the biggest growth area today in how we invest our SHOP dollars to make the best utilization of those dollars on 4 new asset classifications: roads, bridges, culverts, and ITS elements. Once we get to that point, we have to look across those programs and have a robust asset management plan across those programs. And I think that's what we're developing.
Stephen, you know your mic's on. Did you want to comment again?
No, I'm just...
Great, thank you. It's 3:35. We're going to take a 10-minute break so that you have a chance to stretch, and we will start again promptly at 3:45. Thank you.